Hi, I'm Brian Towns. I'm an American actor and voiceover artist who these days lives in Brazil. However, I'm originally from New Orleans, Louisiana, and that's why I am on NOLA Film Scene.
Welcome to NOLA Film Scene with TJ and Plaideau.
I'm TJ.
And as always, I'm Plaideau.
So guys,
folks,
how is the weather in New Orleans?
Temps are coming up. We had that nice crisp 60s degrees weathers for about a week in the beginning of this month. Brian, my friend, how are you? It's been decades since we've talked.
It has indeed. It has indeed, man. Brian Plaideau and I grew up about probably 6 or 8 blocks apart.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. And since then, there's been a whole lot of road, man. I am doing good. I am doing good.
So there's a lot to unpack with your career.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us how you ended up in Brazil?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I'll give you the whole trajectory. So I grew up in Metairie, like I said, about 6 or 8 blocks from Brian. I was probably first introduced to theater there, actually. We used to go to La Petite down in the French Quarter. Is that still there? Even the little children's theater, La Petite Theater?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, but it was just something we did. And then when I was 11 or 12, we moved to Shreveport. And in Shreveport, I did some, that's the first time I started doing a little children's theater, a little community theater. I started doing plays in school. And so by the time high school ended, I said, man, I really like this. This is what I want to do, in general, the acting thing. And then I went to college. I got a bachelor's in theater. I got a master's, and I was fortunate during those times to be able to kind of work and see some other things. And I was sort of introduced to film around 19 or 20. And then when I finished my master's degree, I did what every actor without a plan does, and I moved to New York. That's 50% of the actors. The other ones go to LA. But I moved to New York, and in New York, I did a bunch of theater, and I really started working. There are lots of shows that filmed in New York that I'm sure there still are. At the time, it was Gossip Girl. You have your little walk-ons, and you're this and that. And then a soap opera every once in a while. And I ended up doing a lot of behind-the-scenes work there, too, a lot of production work. Kind of the cool story, I stumbled into a job as a field producer at Saturday Night Live. So the last 4 or 5 years that I was in New York, I was working every week at Saturday Night Live. And then during the time that I was there, man, I actually met an actress doing a play who was a Brazilian, and we started dating and we got married. And then about a year and a half later, she was like, hey, let's have kids. And I was like, okay. And then and the thing is, we just kind of came to the conclusion, we were both doing really well in Manhattan. It was nice, but Manhattan is a kind of expensive place to live. And we just decided between us, like, look, if we have kids here, we're going to end up working more, spending all our time to work, to make money, to pay somebody else to raise our kids. And so where do we want to go? And she suggested, hey, how about we move to Brazil? My family's all together down there, and it'd be great to have that sort of for the first couple of years. And so we moved to Brazil for the first couple of years, and that was 14 and a half years ago. But the cool thing is now I can be a gringo in Portuguese, or I can be a gringo in English. And it's actually allowed a lot of opportunities to do some really big productions. We were talking about a film I did called Bacurau before we started the podcast here. And that one actually went to the Cannes Film Festival and won the jury prize. The year that we went. So, man, I came, I was in New York slogging away doing, basement theater and the occasional walk on a show. And suddenly I moved to another country. It's like, hey, man, I'm at the Cannes Festival, like walking on the red carpet. So
yeah,
funny way of things working out. So that's kind of how it's been. Since then, I've been able to make a full-time living as an actor. And as you guys said, it's a little bit of everything. It's a little bit of screenwriting. It's a little bit of acting. It's a lot of voice work. There are lots of businesses down here that, like, hey, man, we need to, we have this version of a commercial, but we need the voiceover in English, for the international market or institutional stuff. So between it all, it's all kind of worked out in a cool sort of way.
I like to think I've got a good ear for different accents, and I'm pretty good at narrowing down roughly where somebody is from. Brazilians, when they hear you speak Portuguese, can they tell that you're an American speaking Portuguese, or do they just hear that they can tell you're foreign, but not really sure from where?
Yeah. Generally you're from somewhere else, but I'm not sure where. I mean, you know,
Gotcha.
from the look of me, they get like, sometimes it's like, oh, are you British? I occasionally get like, are you French? But yeah, the one of the big differences with Portuguese is the R's are typically a little softer, like in most things. So the stereotypical American, we use R's in words. So the stereotypical American speaking Portuguese basically sounds like he's speaking English and he's just saying Portuguese words.
Right.
Which kind of works in your favor, because sometimes it's like, I've played German before. You know why? Because he talks funny. Okay, cool, good enough. He talks funny. He's not Brazilian. He's a German. Great, done. Man, I got to tell you guys, I really have to compliment you, man. It's very. I follow you on social media, of course, and man, I love the way that you do this thing. There's a certain honesty to it. You know what I mean? Because there's a whole thing of like selling yourself as an actor, and I don't buy into a lot of the cliches. We can talk about that. I'd like to, but there is a thing about, you know, the sort of social media is a sort of curated version of your life and how you sell yourself. And, you know, in terms of actors, like the way to get a job is to have a job. So you sort of always want to show that you're working. You always want to, you know, you always want it to look like you're just like in the middle of the coolest production ever. And I just love the way that you guys are so like open about, hey man, this is what we're doing right now. You know, and you don't give it a second thought about like, oh man, well, it's a student film. I don't know if that's really high profile enough. Let's just post about it, but then not say what it is. No, I mean, just putting it all out there, because that enthusiasm translates into integrity. You know, that's something that people look and go, hey, you know what? I want to work with these guys because they like doing it and it's cool and they're into it and they're about it. And that's exactly the kind of story that you hear for people that then suddenly blow up and start making money. And so, because man, they're not worried about that. They're not worried about how they're perceived by the industry. It's just like, hey, we like to making films. So, you know, if somebody dropped $1 million, you know, $5 billion budget in our lap, we went and made a film. But also, if we had $36 and we didn't have anything to do for the weekend, we went and made a film too, you know? And it's really great, man. So I got to say, just getting into the whole thing, creating this podcast, which, you know, is just a way for like, hey, man, anybody who's doing this, let's get on and talk about it, you know, because there's so many variations to this and so much gray area and so much, you know, it's just really cool. I really have to compliment you guys. It's really great to watch this trajectory.
Thank you. I appreciate you saying that.
Thank you very much. The check will be in the mail. And that's all our time, folks.
Man, I need it because US dollars, man. Those are good.
Hey,
stuff.
there you go.
This episode brought to you by Brian Towns.
There you go.
Oh, wait, compliments. So,
tasty.
Yeah, I fell into this a few years ago, started background, and then after some experiences, started taking acting classes and just keep moving. But it feels like as I find myself in this and it fills me up, that radiates out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And people are drawn to that. And I get a lot of compliments. And somebody goes, I get to work with the legend on this little project. I was like, what? No. But it was nice of them to say that.
Sure.
And so I think I appreciate what you said. And I've always been like that, whether it was Comic-Cons or, you know, I love Disney and I just share my stuff. I don't curate my Instagram except for trying to make the picture right.
Yeah, I think, man, and I think it's a really important thing, because one of the things, I mean, I on the rare occasion that somebody says, what would you tell people who are just starting in this business or something like that? I always like to say, like, nobody, myself included, can tell you how to succeed in this business, you know? And the reason, what I mean by that is just the fact that, first of all, there are so many definitions of success. You know, you have to kind of be clear on, like, what do you want to do? You know, I've known people who I consider successful actors who have run a children's theater company for 30 years, you know, and it's the same 2D scenery and children's plays or whatever, but they absolutely love it. They love doing it. They make a living off of it. It's, you know, they've sent their kids through college doing it. And it's like, right on, man. If that's what's cool for you, that's cool. You know, like what is my definition of success? You know, it doesn't have to be this boilerplate thing of, oh, I'll make a lot of money and I'll get some awards. and I'll spend a lot of time, it's like, man, for me, honestly, I like playing make-believe. And that's what I've always, since I was a kid, I liked running around playing make-believe, and this is a job where I get to play make-believe. Now there's a whole lot to this job that's not necessarily my strong suit. I don't like putting my face in front of people and advocating for myself to get parts, and you know what I mean? And I mean that in a very passive way. I'm not into the whole aggressive Hollywood machine. You got to get your, no, I mean, I think that's the other part of no one can tell you how to succeed, is because there are lots of people out there who have the formula and the answer. And I'm not saying it wasn't true for them or it hasn't been true in their experience. But, anybody who tells you, first you got to, you should be doing a year of background work, and then you should get your 2 co-stars, and then you get your guest star. And after 6 months, you should be this and that. Man, it just, in my experience and for most of the people I've known, it doesn't work that way. And anytime somebody lays down one of those rules, if you go and do just a little bit of homework, you're going to find somebody who not only didn't do that, they did the opposite. And they were super successful. Yep. They achieved whatever they wanted. So, man, you kind of have to, it doesn't mean be arrogant. It means listen to everybody, but do what works for you. And so to your point, man, if this fills you up and makes you feel good, and you're having fun doing it, and it's making results, like you're getting things done, man, go with that. Go with where that takes you, I've known too many people who, but I've been out here for, 5 years and I haven't gotten a this type of role or that type of role. I'm not a series regular yet. It's like, well, you might not be. And then next year you'll book 7 series and 3 Oscar winning films. And then in 10 years, nobody will know your name. The question is, are you having fun?
Yeah.
Is it how you want to spend your time?
Yeah, that's a great point.
You've got to love this to handle the rejection. And it's not always rejection. It's just not an acceptance,
Exactly.
I had one, I just, for this commercial, and I was rushed, I was actually on set in between. So I knocked it out, did my best, but I didn't get to worry about it. Right. Mm-hmm. And I even kind of went, no, this kind of screw it. And I booked.
There you go.
And there are days when you're self-taping and I'm going to craft it a few more times. Mm-hmm. And then you go, okay, that's enough. Oh, wait, that's not, you know what I mean? There is no one set rule to do an audition, to get an agent, to book something, how your look is supposed to go. They say don't play with props in an audition. One day you go, I'm going to do it. You do it. You don't let it overpower the thing, and you book. Mm-hmm. You do it and you did it too long and you don't book. Or it's this there's no rule. It's just go with it and have fun.
Yeah. And I think that the learning for us, the hard part, internally is learning to let that go. I know that doesn't mean be lazy and don't prepare and just throw whatever on tape and send it and just go, well, if it's my time, it'll be my time. Part of what the casting director is going to see, I believe, from what I've seen in the few things I've had to cast or whatever, is that, man, there's a certain spontaneity and a certain just like you're going to take one look and go, TJ Sebastian, that's it. That's our guy. That's our guy. And it doesn't matter if TJ's having a good day or a bad day, or if it's the best version of TJ or the worst version of TJ. You're just going to look there and you're going to be like, that's it. That's what we want.
Yep.
And it's so easy for us to second guess ourselves. And like you said, to craft it is a great word because we craft it. And sometimes crafting it means slowly strangling everything authentic out of it. So it ends up being this incredibly manipulated, controlled thing that they just kind of go like, I wonder what that guy's really like. One of the things that we need to learn too is that like it's a collaborative art. And one of the mistakes that I made when I was young was, of course, like showing up and going, okay, how do you do this? What are the rules? And whatever I do, I don't want to overstep my bounds. I tend to tell this story. I'll try to make the quick version, but national commercial and the real deal, like Union, where you get paid for the day, plus you got residuals, like some of the most money I ever made. It was incredible. It was like, wow. It was like I made like something like $6,000 or $7,000. And then I moved to New York and I was so happy to have that in the bank. And then 2 weeks later, they sent me another check for that because it was another cycle or whatever. I was like, wow. Ah, well. a few times that happens in your life. But the point is, so I booked the commercial and I'm like, yes. And I'm there. I show up, I'm sitting in the corner and, okay, I'm there with a couple other good young actors and we're all there. And it's a food commercial. So of course they have like, food, I guess food specialists, the guys who decorate the food, decorate the props, and they do a whole number on it, whatever. So obviously, I'm very conscientious. This is the product we're selling. So, we need to be in there like, guys, whatever you do, don't touch the food. Oh, no, of course. Right. And there's this one girl who shows up and she's like, she's playing the waitress. And she's hanging on everybody and she's talking to everybody. And she's, and like the three of us are sort of sitting in the booth like, okay, well, this will be the last time she works, and she's making it fun. And then at one point they bring out one of these sizzling platters of things and they say to everybody, okay, be very careful. This is hot. And they call action. She grabs it by the heart part, screams, throws it on the floor, destroys a half an hour and storms off. And then somebody's got to go talk to her. And we're just all sitting there like, whoa, oh my gosh, man, that particular producer, that particular company made commercials with a particular effect, which was very hot for a year's time, sort of a Hype Williams 3D camera thing. So they made one for another popular clothing line that you see in most shopping malls. They made one for, 3 or 4 commercials with that look over the year that you knew it was them. She was in every single one. Does this mean bad behavior gets rewarded? No. But part of the thing was that was kind of who she was. If I had gone in, talked to everybody and hung on everybody, they would have just said, you're acting like a jackass, get off the set. But that was kind of who she was. And she had this thing going on and that was it. So the point is, I would not suggest that to anybody, but you never know. You just never know. I think the basics are show up on time, show up early, show up on time, know your lines, know your stuff, be prepared, and be ready to work, which is to say like, you're going to get hot or cold or wet or dry or muddy and that's, as long as it's nothing that crosses a line for you that wasn't discussed before, as long as it's a reasonable request. Okay. And if it's not reasonable, stop and talk about it and say, hey guys, what can we do here? I'm not comfortable with this. Point is that we're collaborators. So getting back to auditions, like instead of like what I always did wrong for years was thinking, what do they want to see? What do they want to see? What can I do to, instead of just going, okay, I'm going to make a choice. I'm going to decide to do it this way. And that's it. And me bringing something to the table. So sometimes I think we really handicap ourselves in the process by kind of being so worried about following the rules and being good little soldiers and good little workmen. And, like, what do they want to see? I want to be a good actor, and the truth is, man, they got hundreds and thousands of actors. They want to see you, but don't be afraid to, for example, stand up in the middle of a press conference and pitch maybe indirectly pitch a film role to Kevin Smith. Because that, my friend, that was epic. That was epic. Inviting Kevin Smith to do a little something. That's what I'm talking about.
Thank you. That's a Comic-Con, and that was a Q&A. Yeah. I didn't know where you were going with it at first.
Either way, man, that was awesome.
Thank you. He still hasn't come on yet, but we're going to keep pitching.
It's all right.
I'll never give up, Kevin. I'm going to get you. I'm going to get you on the podcast, sir.
He will, Kevin. He will. Yeah, no, and I agree, but that's it. You don't want to overstep. You don't want to be, but on the other hand, people are people. Yeah. And it's so easy to be in a position where, the director's there. So the director said, like, don't speak to the director unless spoken to. No, don't be ridiculous and halt the production. But at the same time, if you've got a question or an idea, pitch it. Throw it out there. And if it's a dumb idea or real quick, if the director is not interested in that, you'll hear it. You'll get the vibe. Zip it and go back to work. A legitimate idea, not just, hey, let me get some attention here and they'll remember me. But again, like the idea of it's so easy if you just keep your mouth shut and go, okay, I'm just going to do whatever they tell me to. You'll do a fine job, but they'll forget about you the minute you walk away.
Yeah.
Or maybe they won't. Maybe they'll love you. Again, no rules.
No rules. And also, similarly, I got that word out. Be directable. Don't go in with, I have to do it this way.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way you came up with. But then the director like, no, I don't like that. Let's do this. Oh no, this was my process. Okay. You can't just throw it completely away. Well, instead of saying no, say yes. Instead of, plunging the knife into her, plunge it into you. You know what I'm saying? It's listen to what they have to say. It's your film and their film. And it if nothing else, not only the creative part, but it makes the time go by better.
Yeah. No, for sure. And it's a job, you're on the clock, you're trying to get something done. Yeah. As far as process goes, man, I'm a big fan of the idea that nobody wants to see your process. We all love I think one mistake that actors can fall into is being actors. See, there's Brian, who's the regular guy, who's a dad. I got 2 kids, 2 dogs, and a wife. I do laundry. I go to the grocery store, whatever. Then there's Brian, the actor. Brian, the actor. What's he like? What's he about? And then there's the character I'm playing, right? So the problem with Brian, the actor, is that it's a bunch of malarkey. And if I bring that to the set, then I'm trying to play 2 characters. Not to get biblical, but I am serving 2 masters, or whatever you're not supposed to be able to do. Yeah. But it's it's that idea that and I have seen actors invest a lot of time in showing everybody in the production what sort of actor they are. I worked with an actor in a series that insisted that everyone call him by his character name at all times. And that there were, basically there was his character and his group who were sort of antagonist of another set of characters, another group. So he didn't talk to those people. To be fair, he wasn't a jerk to them or anything, but he didn't talk to them because I couldn't possibly be friends with you and interact with you, if my character doesn't like your character. And we're talking about like a 4 or 5 month shoot where we're all living in hotels in the same city together. So it's like, okay. And it's not that he was unreasonable, and I have respect for any actor's process. Like if you need your space, take your space. If you need your time within reason, take your time. But at the same time, it's like, how much of this is really contributing to what we're trying to do here?
Yeah.
So I think the rule of thumb for an actor is always that no one will ever get as much out of your process as you will. And nor should they. If I'm watching you on the screen or on stage and I'm seeing what you did, I'm seeing all that writing or movement work or whatever that you did, all that suffering that you did to get into this character, something's wrong. Because I'm not supposed to be seeing that. I'm just supposed to be watching the story. So that's all for you. Don't waste your energy playing the actor. Just play the role. Just play the role. You don't have to switch it on and off when they call action and cut. Okay, if you got to stay in your space, stay in your space, but do that for yourself. Don't inflict it on everybody else.
Yeah.
Right.
We've heard similar takes on that from others as well when the topic of method acting has come up. Some of it seems like it's taken away the discovery in the moment on the scene if you're in it all the time. I don't know.
Well, to Brian's point, it can sort of cement you into the idea of this is how I envision this scene. This is how it's going to go. And, that's the kind of 101 thing is if I'm watching my version of my scene in my head, then I'm not really seeing what's going on. And worse, I'm not paying attention to my partner or partners in the scene.
Yep.
I'm not reacting to what they're giving me.
Yep. Exactly.
Right.
So I was wondering in the back of my mind here earlier when we were talking about voice acting and Portuguese, do you ever get tapped to do things only in Portuguese language?
Voice-wise, no. I'll be honest.
What about film?
I would like to say rarely. I think rarely would be the better word for voice, but it's really only been a handful of times. Because strictly speaking, voice, and I don't have any ill will about this. It's also always an obstacle for me with commercials, because a commercial, man, unless there is an immediate justification for somebody to be speaking with an accent, unless it's literally something where I'm wearing a cowboy hat and there's a big, stars and stripes behind me, people are going to completely miss the message of the commercial. I'm going to come on and open my mouth, and it's going to be like, they're not going to be paying attention to the car or the tomato soup or whatever it is. They're going to be like, why is he talking like that? Unless there's some immediate sell that explains it, if it's part of the concept. So it's always I moved to Brazil and I became a model. Wow. How did you do that, Brian? How did you become a model? It's real simple. When you do commercials, but you don't open your dumb mouth, you're classified as a model. So suddenly it's like, oh, you're a model. Yeah, because just don't talk. Just stand there, hold the tomato soup and smile. No, man, but but as far as parts go, I have a project coming up next year, a film that's filming in February or March next year here, which I'm really excited about just for myself, because they contacted my agency, they tapped me and they were like, yeah, we'd like him to do this role. And they sent the script and I read it. And the cool thing about it is it's in Portuguese. It's a supporting role. It's a good, juicy part. It's in Portuguese and it wasn't written for an American. Like it could be, it's a law enforcement guy. And so the story is such that it could be an international interest, arriving there. Cool. Okay. Tarantino style romp thing. So the point is somebody thought outside the box and said it could be, and we like him for who he is, kind of his whole thing. So we want to cast him. And I'm actually really excited about that because it's one of the first couple of times. I've done one other thing in Portuguese, but I typically get tapped for English speaking roles. And there are a lot, especially now with the platforms. Lots of international production, lots of stuff shooting in English here, because, it's always for, you've got the cool thing about being in a niche market is basically there are probably in the whole country, about 15 of us who are sort of full-time. And there's myself and one other American. There's a couple of British guys. There's an Austrian guy. There's, and it's basically the same handful that every time an audition notice hits and it's sort of like series looking for English speaking actors. It's like, okay, we all show up to the audition. We know it's the same. Hey guys, how you doing? And then once it's all done or the self tapes are all in or whatever, we wait a week or two and then we start sending messages. Hey dude, so did you book that? Yeah. Oh no, James got it. Oh man. Okay. And everybody likes everybody. So it's kind of cool. It's always like somebody from our team won, but it's this interesting thing because it's like, on the one hand, there's work and there's a lot of work, but I always say we're like unicorns. The frustrating thing for me, the next big step for me is being considered as a regular actor. Like, okay, I'm good at Brian. It's my turn to come off pompous here, but I always refer to it as the Arnold Schwarzenegger thing. And I don't mean in the bodybuilding way.
Yeah.
Not that. But the idea that look, man, Schwarzenegger has always had an accent. He's always clearly been a foreigner. But it doesn't matter. Public loves him. We love seeing him. So we don't even worry about it. I remember to this day, there was an action movie, late 80s, early 90s, with Arnold Schwarzenegger as a small town like Texas or something sheriff. But the point is here's this guy with this thick ass Austrian accent and he's the sheriff, local sheriff. Everybody knows him. Everybody loves him. I don't know if during the thing, I seem to recall that somebody calls him Dutch or something. I may be confusing that with Commando. So to me, it's that kind of thing. It's the Arnold Schwarzeneggers and the Salma Hayeks and the Antonio Banderas. And, these people that man, they're clearly immigrants. They always have been, but we like them as people. So we don't demand an explanation. The story doesn't have to be about that. So that's kind of my sort of personal goal that I've sort of set. And like I said, I have a project coming up next year that's a big step towards that. And it's very cool to kind of, again, I think it's kind of a metaphor for just sort of the whole thing. In my case, it's an accent and being from another country. But the fact is, it's for anybody.
Right.
I think, you put yourself out there and if you can just hit that right note of authenticity and being the right thing at the right time in the right place, from then on out, man, people are going to embrace you, like you become castable as whatever. They'll find an excuse to put you in, even if you're not what we typically think of as that.
Yeah.
Now, how you do that? No idea, but working on
it. What about dubbing? Is there work to dub things into English from Portuguese, or is that a completely different area?
Yeah, honestly, not so much for me. No, it kind of goes the opposite way. I do a lot of work with voice and dubbing in terms of translating scripts into Portuguese and sort of like sort of supervising that, like something in English arrives and then sort of like translating, or at least like checking the translation, right? Because in any language, there are lots of expressions that don't quite translate. Yeah. Even if it comes down to linguistic. Like, I'll give you an example. First one that comes to mind: when we miss somebody in Portuguese, we say we have saudades. And saudades is like the feeling of missing someone. But it's like we say, like grammatically, we say we have this feeling. Whereas in English, to miss somebody is an action. Oh, I miss you. We don't say I have missing for you. So you get these little mechanical things that sometimes when it comes to dubbing, whether it be animation or live action, that, you got to kind of fit the phrase at least to synchronize reasonably with the lips, but sentences end up being longer or shorter. So I generally work on that from the other side. I work in terms of getting the English into Portuguese and finding equivalent expressions, or expressions that make sense in the context, that kind of thing. But unfortunately, really cool. Almost anything in Portuguese that needs to be English, they just send it abroad. Once in a while, I do a little something, but small stuff, cultural stuff.
My wife and I have kind of gotten addicted on Netflix. Maybe it's Korean, maybe it's a Hispanic feature from any of the countries, but you can almost tell it's the same actors. Mm-hmm. And they don't always match the emotion or the terror or the action of the scene, because it's, okay, what shall we do now? I don't know. It's a little stiff.
And to your point, Brian, it's really flat. I had this experience. I did a series. I will name this one because I did an episode of a series that was called BA, Beijo Adolescente, which is Teenage Kiss. Now, as weird as that sounds, it actually has nothing to do. Like it's this dark, it's a dark future kind of world. It's based on a graphic novel. Anyway, for what it's worth, I show up in one episode and I play a mysterious sort of American businessman who's basically like funneling money to the Brazilian government because it's set in Brazil. And, he's in some kind of 3D virtual conference with the president of the country on a golf course. We're playing virtual. We're actually filming on a real golf course. We shot on a real golf course. Got to go and take golf lessons for a couple of days. Right. That's a great thing as an actor. They zip you out to the golf course and then they have the golf pro work with you and you're on the driving range. Yeah, I'm really starting to get it. Awesome. 2 days later, you go to film, didn't hit a single ball. Not one. Now, that's not true. I hit one on a bad take. That was it. But literally, like every time there was a take to hit a ball, forget it. Like dirt flying, But it didn't matter. Work with the scene. But for what it's worth, the point is, our scene is in English. And it was so weird because it finally came out. And I was like, man, let me check this out. And I put it on and it was on the English setting. And they dubbed me. I don't know if they dubbed me because of him. I don't know if somebody just got a thing, hey, dub this whole thing. But I'm like, dude, we're speaking English. So if you listen to the original soundtrack, yeah, the guy's got kind of a heavy accent. His intonation is a little weird on some phrases, but it's perfectly understandable. And I'm a freaking American. I'm there. I'm speaking English. I'm acting. It's a wonderful stroll down a golf course. Okay, not a big deal, but making it happen. And then suddenly in English, it's literally somebody dubbed over me going like, well, I don't know, Mr. President. What do you think? Well, yes, the money will be there. I assure you. And it's like, really, guys? Really? Like, this is what you did to make it better for an English speaker? Like, try. Try voice acting. But really, man, so
Voice acting.
exactly. Something, a little intonation.
The voice is the little word.
Right.
That's right.
That's true.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's nice to know that no matter where you go, producers are all assholes. No, I'm just kidding. Don't.
He said that, guys. He said that. I'm really not. I do not in any way endorse or reflect the views expressed on this show are strictly those of Brian Plaideau.
Plaideau, not Towns.
You know,
And not TJ Sebastian.
no. I'm never going to be one of those actors, I don't think anyway, that, I don't watch my own films. Man, I watch my films. I don't watch them obsessively, but I'm sure enough curious to see how they come out. And it's interesting. I know some actors, I remember there was something, I was doing a take in a film, and then things stopped for a second. I walked around like, hey, man, can I get a little playback on that? Camera guy's like, sure. He runs me, a little monitor there, and I watch it. And one of the other actors in the film, guy's been doing it a long time, come by and he goes, you're watching the monitor? I was like, yeah. He's like, oh my gosh, in 35 years, I've never watched myself on the monitor. I was like, okay. I just wasn't sure how this take was going. I want to make sure I wasn't making a fool of myself or moving my eyebrows too much or, that's,
yeah.
To me, it's a tool. It's there,
That's right.
But I think one of the secrets to longevity is sort of just like, man, you gotta, whatever you throw out there, you throw it out and then you let it go, and your performance can be made or it can be absolutely destroyed in the editing room. Yeah. In the process, it's also another chestnut we always throw out, like as actors, man, police your own continuity. Keep up with your own continuity, cigarettes, coffee cups, whatever it is, like stay on top of that for yourself, because you never want to lose that really good take that you did because, somebody's in the editing room and they're not watching your performance. They're like, oh, wait, the cup was here. Now it's here. Okay, well, let's not use that one. Use the one before.
Brian.
Yep.
We're out of time.
That's all right.
We're going to have to yell cut now.
That's quite all right. Oh, no, because when I was imagining this, I was saying such profound stuff. I was I was revolutionizing the industry. Hang on.
But you already did. Very profound.
Guys, listen, thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity to come on and talk to you guys.
I took a theatrical arts, a combat class. Mm-hmm. So they put a sword in my hand. Brian and I are old-time D&D from the 70s nerds. So you can imagine how I had a bastard sword, I had the rapier, I had fencing I had a blast. So the goal will be, we always try to, let's get a project out of this. Some kind of sword and sorcery thing, and I'm bringing you back to the States for it.
Man, I'm in, guys, anytime. And that's the shameless actor thing, but it's actually true. And I've had this experience. I did a web series in New York 20 years ago with a pair of guys who are absolutely terrific. And I've since been back to the States twice to do films with them. It's the kind of thing we always say, like, yeah, man, if it ever comes along, cool. Okay. And everybody means it, but if it ever happens, but it does happen. It does happen. It's not just courtesy. So guys, anytime you think there might be something up, let me know. Yeah. Because I would love to actually be a part of the NOLA film scene in NOLA.
Hey. Excellent.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, Brian.
Take care.